All right, guys. Well, welcome and thank you for joining. So Brian and I presented, exactly what we're going to be looking at today at the ATLIS conference in Reno a couple of months ago, and got some really great feedback. But it was a very different audience there. It was a lot of tech directors as opposed to you guys who I think are the end user for a lot of the types of things that we've built here. A little bit of background: Brian and I had worked together on a little bit of work he had done with his admissions team. He's just a wizard in Power BI and has done some incredible admissions work on the Power BI side. But he reached out to me probably just over a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago at this point, and said, "Hey, I've seen some of the stuff that you've worked on with other schools. Would love to make a live connection to the database for the next round of reporting tools that I build, as opposed to working off exported data." Which is what he had been doing on the admission side. So we spent several months, via Zoom, just building layers and layers and layers of reporting tools. And he's just incredible at kind of making the data pop off the page. I'm the plumber. Like, I'm really good at going in and grabbing the data from the back end of Blackbaud, but he just brings it to life. So I've just been so impressed with Brian at every stage of working with him. And over the last several weeks, we've had some discussions. So I'm actually, I've begged Brian for a long time to come in and join me in some work together. And fortunately for me, his school has said that that's okay. So Brian and I, moving forward, are going to be doing all kinds of fun stuff together. So this is, we are not trying to make a sales pitch here. Wanted to just show off all the cool stuff that he built, but kind of in working with Brian through this type of project, it's shown me that I would benefit greatly from having him around for 100 other things. I think I've met most of you guys before. My name is Matt Clemens. I spent 5 years working for Blackbaud, left Blackbaud 13 years ago, and have been doing independent consulting work since then. And over the past 3, 4, 5 years, that's shifted largely into this Power BI reporting, where we're leveraging live connections to Blackbaud's admissions, registrar, Razor's Edge, and finance databases to be able to combine data and then build a lot of really cool interactive reporting tools. Brian, do you want to give a quick intro as well?
Sure. Yes, and good to be with you all this afternoon. Matt, thanks so much for bringing us together and for the opportunity. Matt described himself as a plumber, and those of us who have worked with Matt and who know Matt know that's not a fair description at all. His expertise and energy behind all of this that we're going to take a look at this afternoon is a driver, and it has changed the game and the way that we look at information here at Norfolk Academy. So again, I'm Brian Jarvis. I work at Norfolk Academy, which is a day school, co-ed day school. We are located about 15 miles west of Virginia Beach. We have about 1,200 students in grades 1 through 12. So thanks for the kind words, Matt. Excited to be with you and with all of you this afternoon. And I think Matt said at the top that we hope this will be much more conversational than perhaps it was in Reno. Smaller group. Unfortunately, we're all in boxes, but we hope that you will dive in, unmute, and let's talk our way together through exploring the things that Matt has been so crucial in helping us build.
And then, it would be helpful for us. I mean, I feel like I've met, a lot of you guys at different points at conferences and, as clients and on 100 different stages. But would you guys mind going around real quickly, just, saying your name, your school, kind of what you're, why you're,
I gotta send a
what are you
picture.
interested in seeing today?
Okay, hold on. Let me
How
get
can
my
Brian
phone.
and I direct some of the conversation?
I don't think I could be more excited right now.
All right, sorry, I'm just going to mute Michelle real quickly. I don't think she realized she's on mute. But anybody want to dive in, kick us off?
Sure. I'm Carolyn Stevens. I'm not on video today because I'm home with my dog who just got spayed. But I am from Cranbrook Schools in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. We are a PK to 12 day and boarding school with about 1,700 kids, and I've worked with Matt on a number of really fun, creative projects. And I saw the slides for this interactive dashboard, and I was just blown away. So want to learn all I can about it.
Thank you, Carolyn.
I'm Amy Henschke. I'm from Our Lady of Mercy School for Young Women in Rochester, New York. It's a 6 through 12 all-girls Catholic school. And I am just getting started in Power BI. Matt's been a huge help. And just very excited to see how this is done.
And Amy is underselling her just getting started big time. She's done some really, really cool work already. So I'm very impressed with what I've seen from Amy.
Thanks, Matt.
I'll go. My name is Kim Hughes. I work at the Seven Hills School in Walnut Creek, California. We're a preschool through 8th school with about 420 kids. And I've been using Blackbaud products for the 16 years I've been here. I started off in development with Razor's Edge and then moved to Education Edge and then implemented all the on products about 7 years ago. And I've been doing Power BI for about 6 months with Matt, like one of the videos that he had sent at some point. So I've just started figuring all that out. So thanks.
Awesome.
I'll say hi next. Hi, everybody. I'm Jean Townsend. My name looks like Jean. So if you're scrolling on there, it looks like Jean, but it's French. I'm not. It's Jean. Dijon, if that helps you remember what it sounds like. I'm currently the database administrator at Thayer Academy in Braintree, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. And Matt has done a lot of work at Thayer before I got here. Been here almost 2 years. Prior to this, I was at Tabor Academy for quite a while, and I've worked at a couple other independent schools, Williston, Northampton schools, School Year Abroad, but always with Blackbaud products. And I keep trying to find time to get into the Power BI dashboards that Matt has built for Thayer that I keep like opening and looking at and being like, okay, today's going to be the day. And then something comes up. So I keep attending all of these. They're awesome. And thank you guys, both Brian and Matt, for doing this today. Appreciate it.
Thanks. If anybody else wants to jump in, that's great. Or if you'd rather not, that's fantastic. We can kick things off. But please, kind of like Brian said, interrupt us at any point. We want this to be conversational. We'll kind of run through the slides and kind of how and where and why this tool exists, and then we'll really jump in and get our hands dirty with a lot of the really cool stuff that Brian's built. So here we go. Brian and I did our intros. It's different on Zoom than in the in the conference room. But I've got 3 kids, live in Charleston, South Carolina. Kids just got out of school on Monday of this week, so my house is much louder now when they're with the summer babysitter. So I apologize in advance if you hear any background excitement here. And Brian's I'll brag on Brian for a half second. Brian's youngest just graduated from Norfolk Academy and going to the University of Virginia in the fall. So he'll be an empty nester in the next couple of months.
Yes, unfamiliar territory for us. We have 2 that will be in college. And I should have said that maybe at the top. So my time here at Norfolk Academy is split probably 60-40 between admissions and institutional research. I've spent taught 23 years math and teaching coach here, and that's how I kind of got my feet wet, of course, as we all probably have in some different ways at independent schools.
All right, so Brian, do you want to drive us through a lot of
Well, I lost my control of yours, so why don't you?
All right, I probably stole that back, so sorry. Do you want to try one more time, or talk us through it? I can do the bouncing.
So we'll give a little backstory and just try to frame this out a little bit to get to the student data piece. So when we talk about, and I'm using the reference here at Norfolk Academy, and it's different at every school, but I more intentionally now than I ever have want to bring folks along who are interested and energetic about data and really describe what we're trying to do with it, what we shouldn't maybe try to do with it, and then talk a little bit about where we landed in our presentation and discussion today. So data we all know can improve clarity and focus, increase access. It should make our lives better. It really reduces the friction here that we have in order to get to the data that we've always had at this school. We've just never had, in our opinion, really good, clean, interactive ways to get to it. And Power BI has changed the game on all of that. What good data use also gives us is the permission to lean into it and spark further inquiry and questions. And then ultimately, we want to use it to inform our decision making. What it doesn't do, and we say this in each time we have a chance, it's not prescriptive. It informs the conversation. It presents information that has happened or maybe would likely in the future happen, but it doesn't drive us. We use it and let it inform our discussions. It's very messy, as we all know in this room. Most of our time is spent in the messiness and not in the pretty things. It's never a proxy for professional judgment. And so we really try to spend a lot of time setting up what data is and what it should be and what it really shouldn't be. And it absolutely shouldn't be for our school and every other independent school. Another thing, we want it to make our lives easier. And that's a really important piece for our teachers and coaches and administrators. So the interactive reports that we're going to walk through, and maybe some of you have clicked through already, immediately they give us better access to information we've always had, and we're a Blackbaud Microsoft school, but we've just never been able to access and interact with in these ways. And it's given our admin teams in middle and upper school especially the ability to get to information fast and help make decisions about students and support them. And with Matt's help from day one, we wanted to start at the most granular level, knowing that we were ultimately going to have people on this campus, and a lot of them that wanted us to aggregate and start to look at historical trends and patterns to further question some of the things we might see and to open up larger discussions. So Matt from day one has suggested, and we have built these at the student level in the most granular way possible so we can aggregate them and look at things over time. The time variant for all of us we know is a really important piece of how schools look at information.
Awesome.
So why did we do what we did with the student data? So as Matt mentioned a few years ago, we just got frustrated a little bit with the ability for us to be able to see admissions information. And so we built Power BI reports that have, again, changed the way we look at our admissions data. We don't build spreadsheets anymore. Everything is in Power BI. You can't break it. It's web-based. And it has changed the nature of how we lean into and posture ourselves around data in the admissions office. Talking with the head of school and trying to grow into what is happening across the country through organizations like SIS, which is the Center for Institutional Research in Independent Schools, and others. We wanted to build this out and grow it and start to scale it. But what we realized really quickly is we didn't have the technical expertise to do that in Blackbaud. Enter Matt Clemens. And so Matt's energy and expertise has become the connective tissue that allows us to really get into the data in Blackbaud and see it in a way that we can do something with it. We've always had it. We haven't created any new data points or fields. Well, we kind of have, but not really. We're just using it in a much better way. So it improves the clarity, the connectivity, the way that we can use data in service to our mission and to the most important people on campus, and that's the students. So we mentioned the access and interaction, which is the fastest way folks associate themselves with the positivity or the benefits of Power BI. We really wanted to start to look deeper at a student's journey. So we have grades, we have participation, we have fine arts participation, leadership, athletics. We couldn't see their story in a single place. And so what Power BI is allowing us to do with Matt's help is bring those things PDF or the comment slip, et cetera. So that was really the thrust. And then we wanted to anticipate going into longer, deeper dives with aggregate and longitudinal data trends. And we'll show you some of that. Okay, so this was fun. So when the head of school and I were talking, and he said to me at the time, let's try to scale out and grow what we've done in admissions across the school. And we agreed that the best place to start was in the student outcomes. Those are the most important folks. That's where we've got all the information. So one of the best ways to actually get started, I have found for myself and maybe for others who are here, is to really sketch it out, to sit down with leadership, to go through and say, what is it that we want this thing to look at? What is the story we're trying to tell? And so I did that by hand and shared it with Matt early on. And I think we've got a slide of that.
And it's, you know, this is kind of how I start most conversations with most schools I'm working with is, you know, scribble something out, like literally take a piece of computer paper, scribble out kind of what you want things to look like. And usually it is literally scribble, but this is what Brian shared, you know, immediately.
So I think that I would echo that and spend just a second saying that in the work that we've done and that you might do and that other schools are doing, we sometimes get to the data too quickly. When in fact, from an institutional research or longitudinal perspective, being able to hold off and spend the deep dive and the conversations and really understanding the questioning and the inquiry, what is it that we're after and why, makes the rest of the things that are going to come, and Matt's work in particular, easier to anticipate and to contextualize. So we started with a few sheets of paper. This is one of them that would sketch out the trend analysis for grades. So with that vision, we started to create a feedback loop. And this is, as Matt described, iterative, messy, but intentional and purposeful and collaborative. So once we had the vision, we needed to get our hands dirty, and Matt's were dirtier than mine. But on Zoom and in conversations, he understands the information and how it translates into offices like ours, into schools like ours. And he was able to get us everything. Quite honestly, query after query after query. And then we were able to play around with how to present that, what story it was telling, what pieces were missing, what pieces we wanted to tweak, how we wanted to best present it, and then put that into a feedback loop through testing and feedback. And what happened out of that, which is natural in this work, is more questions. What about? How could we? What might we see? Why is this? And all of those questions create a posture change at our school of leaning more into inquiry and comfort with questioning rather than having the data just be a presentation tool.
And I think that's such an important part of it. I think a lot of kind of historically what I've done is kind of build the tool that a school is asking me to build. And, you know, I'm thrilled to do it and I love to do it, but kind of in working really, really closely with Brian through a lot of this, we got a lot deeper into the why and the what next, and it just enabled me to better understand kind of how we would reformat the data to be able to tell a story differently. So it's just been incredibly enjoyable to kind of see this thing go from that piece of paper to, you know, where we've ended up at this point. So, you know, kind of first things first, and I know a lot of you guys have touched Power BI. For those of you who haven't, fantastic. You know, what is Power BI? It's Microsoft's data analytics tool and data visualization tool. At the back end of the system, really all that we're doing is pulling in a whole bunch of data, and we can literally look at that data, you know, similarly to the way that we'd look at, you know, 20 different tabs of an Excel sheet. So behind the scenes, we're just grabbing some data, we're feeding it into Power BI, and then we're just tying it together in all kinds of ways to be able to tell, you know, 100 different stories. Couple of the things that are really powerful about Power BI are that we can pull data from, you know, a single source. You know, if that's an Excel sheet or a Google sheet, that's great. Or we can pull from multiple data sources. And, you know, for this particular project with Brian's team, those multiple data sources are, you know, 20 plus advanced lists that we built within the Blackbaud suite to feed all kinds of information in. Brian, I'm not sure if we pulled anything from like a Google Sheet or from anywhere outside, but I've done that with who's on the call? Carolyn. I know Carolyn and I have done some of that where we've pulled some info from a Google Sheet or from an Excel sheet and tied it together with data that lives in the Blackbaud universe. So 100 different ways that we can pull data from 1,000 different disparate sources and then tie them together in a single, you know, visualization platform. The BI and Power BI is business intelligence, and really, you know, a lot of that just comes from the power of visualizing the raw data that we're pulling in. The Power BI desktop software, which is where we build all of these reporting tools, is free. There's no cost. It's from Microsoft. It'll load on any Windows computer, and that's an important point. It only will load on a Windows machine. But, you know, download the software. It takes about, I don't know, half a minute to download. You can build. There's no cost at all from Microsoft's end to download it, play with it, start pulling data, doing things. Where they begin to charge is when we publish the reporting tools that we build. If we publish them out to the web for other users beyond just the person who's got the Power BI desktop software, for those users to be able to access it through a browser interface. Microsoft charges in the nonprofit world, I've seen generally between $2 and $3 per user per month for the licenses to be able to access it online. So for a school that has 20 users on campus, you might be looking at an annual cost on the range of, I don't know, $600, $800 a year for users to be able to interact with it. So not a hugely expensive tool, but there is a little bit of ongoing cost tied to it. I've had several schools where their existing Microsoft licensing agreement already provides them with access to the Power BI tools, but most schools do not at baseline. So they end up paying a few bucks per user per month for that access. And in different Zooms that we've done with this same group, we've kind of run through in a little bit more detail how we go into Blackbaud, build the list, feed it out to Power BI. I've got those recordings out on my website. I'm going to post this recording out to the website as well. So if you want to dive deeper, there's several kind of step-by-steps that we've looked at different points in time to be able to get your hands really dirty. We're not going to go into a lot of that today, but I'm happy to connect offline if anybody wants to go into any of that in more detail. In this link right here, we'll share these slides out as well after we wrap up. This link takes us to the code snippet where I think it's literally 8 lines of code that we can copy and paste, tweak just a couple settings within the code for your specific school domain and the ID of the list and the key and the secret of the user who can access the data. And then you can have data flowing within 5 minutes from a Blackbaud advanced list into Power BI. So I'll share a whole bunch of stuff after we wrap up.
Before we kind of switch gears, now might be a good time to pause just to see if there are questions or comments or things that you thought you might have heard that you didn't, or things that you heard that you want to ask more about before we kind of move into the Power BI realm. All good?
Brian, I had one question. I've looked through all of the slides from this, and I was curious if you started with one, like the picture you showed us earlier, or were you thinking of all of this in the beginning and then you sort of just like pulled it all together? But like, did you tackle it all, or did you have one specific starting point?
There are many hand-drawn pieces of paper. So what Matt was really helpful on and a good thought partner, as well as the folks here, is we kind of anticipated the questions we've been asking for years. And so I kind of started with those. Why do math grades do this over the last 5 years? How would this compare to this? What's going on? And, how well does our baseball team compare to it? So I had kind of that just being here for a little while, the questions that I knew would be asked. And so I wanted to try to find, with Matt's help, the best starting point to be able to start with an individual student, which is where we all live, and then grow that into more analytical approaches with aggregation and trend analysis. So several more pages, but it would also, I would say, in fairness, it changed, and Matt helped me change over time the things that we should be thinking about, because other schools and other teams were also thinking about that.
And I think it's a really important, follow-up to that is, from my side, just kind of in working with this, I think that was probably my favorite part of working with Brian on this type of project. Was not a, hey, go build this thing for me. It was a, let's talk through the why and the what's next. And then now that we've got this data, what other stories could we potentially tell with it, so that before I go to my leadership team and, present this, I want to anticipate what's coming next. So just a really thoughtful approach to, not just the building, but also the deployment internally, where he was very, very, very intentional with the way that he rolled it out to different user groups in different phases. And that enabled us to get ahead of a lot of the questions that were coming, just so that, Brian's, I love it. His quote, he said it to me at one point, is like, the first bite of the apple has to be, really sweet. So you don't want to show them that half-baked product early in the process if there's a way to get pretty far along, just to get them excited about it, as opposed to the, oh gosh, what are we even looking at here?
Really good question. And I would just echo that and say, as we all would say, I think it's still living and breathing. So even what we're looking at today has changed. Even there's more questions. And quite honestly, of course, from our different perspectives, that's what we want, is the ability to have colleagues ask questions, because that means they're in that inquiry posture. And that's how we all believe we get better. And so throw the data out for just a second, the ability and the comfort and the trust that comes with something like this across schools to lean into things that are sometimes uncomfortable with information or to ask uncomfortable questions helps us get stronger. And I think that's a really important part of what data and analysis can help do.
So Brian, that kind of leads into a question that I have, but I don't want to divert us too far off of like the Power BI thing, but how do you convince your institution to get into institutional research? I know you said you're 60-40. I'm guessing the 40 is the IR piece.
That's right.
We're right on the cusp of it. And I know like one of the things is that we're also concerned about the sustainability. Like if I'm the only person doing this at my school and I retire in 5 years, what does that look like for Cranbrook? So we can take the conversation offline if I'm the only one that's interested in that piece of it, but I just, it's been rattling around the back of my mind, and what you just said sort of gave me that entree.
Yeah, I'm happy to take a shot at it and then get others' input as well, and would be also happy, Carolyn, to take that question offline and have a discussion anytime you want. So I would say that what happened for us was that we used Power BI in the admissions suite to make decisions and to inform things that we thought we had good information on and good intuition, but we were doing it all anecdotally. And so in some ways it reaffirmed our strong intuition, but it was empirical evidence to help us make decisions and change some of the things that we did in admissions. And we're seeing the benefit of that. So the short answer is we did some things that we changed to the good, and that built trust and support for what became to be IR efforts outside. Okay. We wanted to repeat that. So small wins, the hearts and minds, I would say, is the easiest way in. Helping colleagues, getting to a place where data informs a positive decision was the way we moved forward quickly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'll just throw in a little bit there. I mean, I've seen several job postings over the last few months on some of the different listservs and boards for dedicated IR positions at schools. But one thing that I picked up at ATLIS, at the ATLIS conference, there were several really, really great sessions run by the SIS group. And it feels like, a lot of schools love the idea of having the institutional research, a lot of tech departments, a lot of groups. But I think that getting started a lot of times is the biggest hurdle is, how do we even begin to do it? And, a lot of the type of work that I'm doing with the schools I work with now is, trying to help lay that groundwork. I mean, I almost consider part of the work that I'm doing institutional research as a service, which, is definitely not the best, model. It's not the perfect model. I think, having a dedicated person who's, living it and thinking about it and having the conversations on the ground, I think is critically important. But a lot of the types of work that I can do with schools can help, facilitate some of those conversations, whether it's on the registrar side or the admissions office. To Brian's point, getting some of those small wins up front is big, and being able to, present here's what we could do next.
Yeah, here's a shameless plug for institutional research. I just threw a link into the chat, which I hope works. About 8 or 9 of us got together under the leadership of Eric Heilman out of Murray School through SIS, and we put together a guide to institutional research in independent schools. So if you're having trouble sleeping at night and you need 100 pages of all things data and really more of the why and how to build trust and leadership and surveys and data analysis, it's worth a spin. We worked hard and loved the work and have really enjoyed listening to folks use some of that in the work they do each day. So shameless plug, but I'll put that out there.
And I've read every page. It is fascinating for people who live in this, the space that we all live in. So it's worth the read. All right.
All right.
Questions. And guys, please at any point jump in. If anything's crossing your mind, throw it in the chat, interrupt us. Want this to be conversational as much as it can be. So this is kind of, Brian, I'll let you take it back over from here as we're talking through next steps.
So the next series of slides, when we were doing this live, it's helpful a lot of times to see things in a static environment. So we all like to grab our mouse and play, and we know what, so if there's, I'm going to move through this pretty quickly under the assumption I'm going to make one that folks have had a chance maybe to click around a little bit in the live Power BI, but these slides really describe the setup of the student data report pages that are coming, and then maybe to the next slide, Matt. So there are 7 of them. I think, that are out there, and there are more here at Norfolk Academy. We just picked 7. And then the next slide, they move in order really of individual student to more aggregate in terms of data information. And so in sharing at Norfolk Academy and in the initial meetings, I've always tried to do a cover page like this so that folks can read through and understand what the page is trying to do and why, and how they navigate it, because a lot of folks at the beginning were unfamiliar with Power BI. So we're all used to text. It slows our brains. It reduces the cognitive load, so we don't have as much visual and number and text. And this has been a helpful way to kind of feed, if you allow me to slowly, folks to get ready to jump into Power BI.
And this is huge. And this is again where, you know, I lean so hard on Brian's expertise in a lot of different areas, because I've come at it with the, you know, engineer mindset. I'm an engineer by training. I just want to build the thing and then, you know, just have it there. But I kind of that end user interactivity with the tools. It's just such a thoughtful approach where he's just done an amazing job of getting adoption on his campus by a lot of different users.
Thanks, Matt. And so the next series of slides are, again, static, and they're screenshots and with some pink boxes. And really, I just want to point out, before we jump all together on it live, just kind of what it's trying to do and why, and some helpful things that have really been beneficial for us. So first, Matt was able to give us, 13 years, I think, is what we have of student data. And so I'm going to go left to right in the pink boxes. It's a searchable series of report pages. So while that's Matt's picture, and we've anonymized all the information for sample, we can search and look through all the different students that are in the database, and we can look at their link to Blackbaud and connect directly to their student record. That's the second pink box. So we're only a click away from what Matt is able to put into Power BI for us to get back to Blackbaud in even more detail. There's some demographic data on the left. And so that really is an accessibility thing for us and our admin teams and counselors. The center is the most probably crucial piece of this page, which is a trend analysis from grade 5 to grade 11 in this case, to show Matt's progress in 5 different academic disciplines. So we chose 5 at our school because those we feel reflect the academic journey more so than maybe the fine arts or electives or that kind of thing. It would be different for every school. And then in the top right, you can start to see a little bit of aggregation in terms of Matt's performance over that period of time, his current schedule, the teacher email. Matt was able to get us the teacher email, so we no longer have to go anywhere but one page, this one, for our admin team to bring together a schedule and email teachers on the fly. Down at the bottom, this gets back to the story. So not only do we have grades, but we have a little bit of that student's participation in athletics and in fine arts. So in one single, almost static page, there's not a lot of clicking going on here. We can start to tell a little bit of the story of this student. And so if there's a question in the counseling office or a grade level chair or in the admin team with a log on to Power BI and pulling up and searching a student, they have much more history than they've ever had before in a very visual way.
And we'll see as we jump into the actual live report. I mean, Brian's did some really, really cool stuff here where, when we hover over different parts of the page, it brings a lot more detail to light. So visually, initially, we can just see that the student did participate in athletics, but we can go through and see, what team, who was the coach, what level did the student play, pull a whole bunch of additional information through without any more clicks.
So there are 3 or 4 individual pages, and then we started to build some aggregation. So an example of that is looking at distributions of grades over time by department, by discipline, by grade level. We can break it down by gender. We can break it down by athletic team. And so again, the filterability of Power BI just allows us to slice and filter data and interact with it in ways that are very forgiving. We just reset the filters. We can't make mistakes. We can't break it. And it's baked in. It's never going away. And so the starting point for something like this analytically is again, game-changing for us.
And I think one more really important follow-up on that is, this tab and this tab are exactly the same underlying data. So really the legwork is getting that good connection to your live data coming out of Blackbaud, and then it takes minimal additional legwork to build 96 different angles of looking at it. As Brian and I were working on the demo presentation for ATLIS a couple of months ago, we were like, hey, maybe it would be cool to be able to look at it by athletic team. And this is something I don't think we had baked into Brian's live tools at the time, but we'd literally already pulled every student's athletic participation. So we just dragged a new filter in, pulled a drop down, and then we're immediately able to see the grade distribution for the soccer team versus the lacrosse team versus the baseball team. It's super powerful once the initial legwork is done.
And what we have found on a page like that with the aggregation by distribution, by course and by discipline is, through department heads now and looking at the different courses in their departments over time, by gender, by grade level, they're able to, again, help frame the discussions that they have naturally, but more they've had it anecdotally and with intuition. And now this data and the detail in this data is helping support what they thought they might have seen, or even more importantly, sometimes pushing against something they thought was happening one way, when in fact, the data suggests something different. It's a really healthy posture for a school, we believe here. This is one that's not in the live demo, but this is an example of using the demographic piece that we've just never had before in order to look at performance. And in this case, we used selected ethnicity, and really eye-opening patterns of data happen when everything, as Matt said, is baked into Power BI, and then it's filtered on whatever field you would like to filter it on. And we have just never had the ability to do this without creating reports and spreadsheets that die the minute you save them and the minute you share them. And this now is baked in over years for something that we've never been able to do at our school.
All right, so this is the link out to the actual report we're looking at. I think I shared that in the email yesterday, and I'll share it again later. But when we were at the Reno session, we just put it on the screen so people could dive in. Talk real quickly here, kind of if you've never touched Power BI, how would we get started in getting this data? So, a couple of kind of wonky things here where I'm happy to hop on a chat anytime with anybody to kind of get you off the ground. I've probably done that with 30 different schools who, I haven't ended up working with, but I just kind of get the wheels in motion for them to be able to go start playing. So thrilled to do that with anybody who wants to. But a couple of back-end pieces on the Blackbaud side. Then we build the advanced lists, and this group that we have here today, we're all Blackbaud schools. We're all on that Blackbaud listserv. That's how we ended up here together. But I built exactly the same set of tools, or very, very similar sets of tools, using data from Veracross, PowerSchool, a lot of admissions data from Ravenna and from School Admin, and a range of other software packages. So where I've seen it be insanely powerful is maybe the admissions office is using Ravenna, but then the academics office is using Blackbaud. We're able to pull data from disparate sources and then tie it together completely to be able to tell a united and full story of 100 different layers. The rest of that I'll kind of leave here for now. And then really let's get our hands dirty in the actual report.
Yeah, and as you're doing that, Matt, maybe another good opportunity. It's been such a polite and quiet group, which can mean a couple of things. Just to see if there are questions or just reactions to before we dive in. Things you definitely want to see or don't want to see. How can we help this group navigate? Because there's too much, and you've played on your own, hopefully, or we'll have an opportunity too. But what things might we answer before we jump in?
I'm very interested in what the averages are that you're using for, like, your English department. Is that a grade book average, or is that the final grade expressed as the translated percentage?
So that's a fabulous question. Matt and I are both smiling and nodding because we spent more time on this thoughtfully and correctly than maybe in any other place, because our 5th grade lower school and 6th grade is on trimesters. And in our upper school, we have semester classes. And so when Matt says he's a plumber, that's not true. First of all, that kind of DAX ability and Power BI and ability to pull things out of advanced lists was magic. And so what we did was we used what you're looking at are final grades, which are the end of the year grades, and then semester courses only in the upper school. And we have used an average, just a normal arithmetic mean for those final grades for each of those years in each of those disciplines. So Matt pulled every marking period grade we've ever given at our school, but we, in thinking together, chose to go to the final, because that would be fairly easy. And then actually in the top right, what you'll see is a semester schedule, and Matt will help us plop in semester grades so we can kind of see kids as they move through the 2 different semesters in our middle and upper schools. That was a long way around the barn. I hope that was a
No,
helpful.
that's good.
Yeah, and I think even mid-year, so a little bit of the kind of nitty-gritty behind the scenes. When we were pulling the historic grades, we went back to 2012, 2013. I can't remember what the first year was that we pulled, but because those historic grades aren't changing, or if they're changing, it's so infrequent, we loaded them, we pulled them in once, and then we told them not to refresh every time the report refreshes. So we got them in place. We had the ability, if we ever needed to refresh them, we could refresh any of them, but we said, you know what, go grab them and then turn off the refresh so that it runs in seconds, as opposed to taking several minutes to go get every single list we've ever pulled. Then we took all of those grades. We ended up doing one list per academic year. And within Power BI, we stacked all of that into a single table where we've got, I think, 500,000, maybe just over 500,000 rows of student per year, per grade, per marking period grade. So behind the scenes, we have every grade that's ever been awarded. But to Brian's point, we use the final grades in running a lot of averages and the calculations and the displays.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great question, though.
Question. Okay, so do you guys want to dive in?
Yeah.
Okay. Matt, you want to take us through, and we'll just kind of pause and see where people want to go with it. Those are great questions, and keep them coming.
Yeah, please interrupt anytime as we're looking at stuff. So, these first couple of tabs, again, this was built, for the conference room. So we wanted to present a little bit of the backstory of kind of what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Who are we? That type of thing. We can use this little toggle at the bottom. So if anybody's clicked on that link, wonderful. But you can click into that. Right now it shows 2 of 9. I can click on that and it brings up this little menu where I can jump from page to page, or I can use the arrows at the bottom just to scroll through, one page at a time. So here, and this is just so incredibly powerful, and it's something I had never thought to do in all of the years I've built, hundreds, maybe even thousands of Power BI reports, of kind of setting the framework for what are we looking at for the end users who are actually living in it. And I love this. There's no data here, but it's just a wonderful thing. The historical, I think this is where it starts to get really powerful, really quickly. When Brian and I were doing this, we were like, yeah, we probably don't want to put pictures of your students into this thing. And, we were like, let's go find some pictures online, like uncopyrighted pictures. And I had a hard time even finding, high school kid pictures. So I found the oldest photo of me on Facebook. And so this is not quite high school, but this was, I think, freshman year of college photo. So in reality, when we toggle, it actually brings up the student's photo. But here, I've just hard-coded this one photograph into place. I had so much more hair than it was a really good time in life to have that much hair. But this little drop down, we can search student by student. So right now we're looking at this 1889. Brian, do you remember what the default was initially?
4893.
4893. And again, we've depersonalized this just so we're not showing student names. We've done a little bit to tweak the grades so that it's not showing true grades and actual 100% true trends. But this, in Brian's live version, this is literally any student who's attended his school in the past decade. We're able to pull all of this type of information. Some things that I think are really cool here, once I'm on the student record, of course, I've got a lot of these details. This link to Blackbaud right now, I don't think it goes to any record. Again, I don't want you guys jumping into Brian's site and looking at a student's info, but that will take us to any part of the student record we want. I think we've got it going to the academics, something on the academics page of the student record. If we click that, it'll open in a fresh browser window and we can jump straight in. Like Brian said, the trend line across departments, we can immediately see that this student, that 6th grade year may have been a little tough. Those grades are a little bit lower in a couple different subject areas, but really bounced back nicely as they moved ahead into high school. And then what I think is so cool here, the athletics participation, I can see that the student participated in a fall sport every year. I can see they did a winter sport all but the last 2 years, but with just a hover, I can see what that sport was. So I can see that in the fall, the student played football with Coach Fowler. And in the spring, looks like this student did both crew and I've got at boys crew and crew. So it looks like he was on 2 different teams, may have bounced between levels within the crew team during that year. But even though we're not displaying that information natively on the page, it's a hover away to be able to get to any other types of information that we want to see here. Brian, anything else you want to kind of point out here?
I would echo that and say to everyone that this is kind of the highest level. So if you're, our director of our middle school wants to see the snapshot, this is where he goes, and he doesn't have to click on a thing. He can hover and get some quick information. As we move through, we'll see the ability to get even more granular in terms of detail. And maybe should we just keep rolling?
Yeah, and guys, please at any point stop, interrupt us. We'd be thrilled to go deeper anywhere anybody's interested. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So in looking at this, you pointed out earlier the teacher emails, which is awesome. And does that tile update each year? Is that sort of, have you tied it to like current year, or do you have to go in and refresh all of these pages every year to get it showing properly?
So go ahead, Matt.
Well, no, it's truly a live feed where right now this is looking at the 23-24 year. But when we flip one switch and say, you know what, time to show 24-25 rather than 23-24, it'll pull all those teacher emails in. So really what we're doing is for the student enrollment, we're grabbing the lead teacher ID from the course record. And then we've got a separate list that's pulling that teacher ID and then pulling the email directly tied back to that. So there is zero manual work once it's done, aside from just rolling, the entire report forward from 23-24 into 24-25.
So it's tied to the student's schedule directly to the left. It's probably the same advanced list pull.
It is. And I think we ended up, because there's several other areas we were pulling other teacher information. I don't know if we're showing all of them in this report, but even, trend lines by teacher year over year, all the years they taught English 9, kind of what do the grades look like? I don't think we're showing any of that here, but in prepping for those, we pulled a lot of teacher biographic and demographic information and then just leverage that to be able to just tie it to the schedule data points.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, good questions.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
How did you pull the link to Blackbaud from?
It's actually shockingly simple. So if you open a student record in Blackbaud, go to whatever part of the system you want to be in. So if it's core, or if it's enrollment management, or if it's academics, and then go to the tab on that record that you want to pull. Look at the link at the top, or the actual address, and you can hijack that address, just merge in the user ID, and it will take you to that same landing page for every single student when you click that link. If I tried to link back to like an enrollment management record of a student who didn't have an enrollment management record, it's smart enough to default back to the core record for the student. I think it goes to the profile, something on the core version of the record. But it's once I realized that that's all that it was, it became, just a quick little, merge to link straight to it. And then you've got to mark it as a link within Power BI. And then there's one more setting to tell it to display as a link instead of just a big ugly string. But it takes about 8 seconds to set it up once you've got that link.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the photo is the same thing. So the photo, there's a advanced list endpoint for the file name of the photo. And if you right click on the student photo within Blackbaud and say open a new tab, then you can just hijack that link and then just parse in the file name that comes through the advanced list, merge that in, and it loads in real time as you're toggling between the students. And the beauty of that is on the Blackbaud backend, those are sitting in some kind of temp folder, but as the daily refreshes are running in the background, as that link changes, the actual live link within Blackbaud to the student photo, it also changes in the list, which then forces the change into the Power BI report, so that we're always pulling that photo, even if things shift over time.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. This next one, Brian, tell me, it was 1889. Was that the one that we were thinking?
Yes.
Okay. Here, I'll let you talk through kind of what we're seeing here.
So I was going to ask the group and want to be respectful of everyone's time. So there are 6 more of these, but maybe it's worth just throwing out, are there ones that you have either seen or run into that we want to dive into first and not necessarily go in order of student individual to aggregate? What's the flavor of the group here in the last remaining time that we have? Does anybody have a preference? Okay, well, we'll keep going and we'll try to keep an eye. We again want to be respectful of the time. So this is more now granular. This is a report card view. That's what I called it when I sat with the admin teams. And so for those of us who've lived in Blackbaud, as a teacher, I could not see what I'm seeing right now in Blackbaud without several clicks or downloads or PDFs. I don't think over the years. So this is a straight report card view that mimics those trend lines we saw, but numerically. And then we've captured the distributions on the bottom left. So you can see really quickly our admin team or a counselor where this student really performed well. That's the blue bar. Where the C's were, which is kind of my grade average. And then at the bottom, you can look at the 8th grade year and go, wow, that's the 8th grade year was hard. There was a D in there. There were more C's than B's. There weren't any A's, and things got better as you moved to the 11th grade year. You can see the blue bar widening. So the visualization and the reduction of the cognitive load to see what is happening with a student is part of the enormous magic and power in PowerBI. It's the visualization of what is raw numerical data, and our people needed to see it both ways. There's a comfort level in seeing it the way you've always seen it, and then be able to filter and balance on the right in whatever way they'd like. I'll pause there.
And I think that, you know, begins to get into a lot of the roll up where, you know, everything we've looked at to this point is that individual student view where I can dive in, I can see, you know, details for any student who's ever attended. Here, yeah, this one was really cool too. So we'll talk for just a moment here and then we'll dive into some of the others. But, you know, the athletics participation, we're just rolling out, you know, everything that's not an academic class that the student has been involved with during their time at Norfolk Academy. So, you know, the fine arts participation, I can immediately, you know, hover, see the details. I can see which sports the student has played and in which seasons. And then the other activities I really liked here. So this lower school art in 2nd grade, for some reason back in 2013-14, it was coded slightly differently as an activity on the student record. But then I can see that they took the Maymester in some sort of art history and a Maymester in Germany, but just grabbing every potentially interesting data point from academics, from activities, from athletics, and from really any corner of the system that might be useful. A lot of schools handle, you know, a lot of those data points very differently, and I think that's the power of Power BI is if we can get the data to flow, we can present it in any way that is going to make sense, kind of school by school.
Yeah, and I would say for our school, and maybe there are other schools, many schools like this, the teacher coach model is alive and well. And so what I was trying to do is put the conversations that we normally have to figure out who's coaching who is the adult in this child's life, who is the advisor, how can we get to this child in a very positive or supportive way, who are the people that do that. And this tells us their participation level, but even as important as that, it tells us who are the adults that this kid is in the room with or on the field with, and how can we leverage those teacher-coach relationships in ways that are positive. That was more anecdotal and across the room before we had something like this.
Yeah, and it's amazing just to have all that history just in a single view. Who's every advisor this kid's ever had? It's just right there. And then this is, I think, the last one that's the kind of the single student view, but also really powerful. So we're starting to combine the single student look with some trend data here. So Brian, kind of explain at the bottom what we're looking at here. What is this telling us?
Sure. So I'm going to get you, Matt, just to click on every grade. So we're going to ask we're going to filter in and bring in for every year that student attended Norfolk Academy, 5 through 11 in this case. And in the top right, what we're looking at are the comparative averages and medians for that student, all the students in every one of those years. And then this student's graduating class was the class of 2024. And so by doing that, it's filtering that information. At the bottom, we now see the trend analysis by discipline. The dark line is Matt's performance. And then we've split up the entire graduating class and over the years that Matt attended by gender in the yellow dotted and gray dotted. So everyone always asks, how's this kid doing compared to his peers? And this is the way we came up with to help show that. So it's different for every student based on the time they've been at Norfolk Academy, their graduating class, but it allows us to see in a comparative higher level way how that child, even the members of his or her class, are doing over time.
And just insanely powerful. So I think we started with, looking at the individual student, and then we started building the trends. And then Brian was like, hey, wait a minute, hold on. Like, let's combine that and tell another really interesting story. And it just took a few minutes of writing some formulas to be able to, visually immediately, make that story come to life. Kind of as we move to the next, I guess, any questions here as we're jumping away from the individual student view and more into the kind of the roll-up view? Okay.
All right, so this is where actually, to the question that was asked earlier, this is where the questioning from our admin team started. It's in the aggregate. And so what I wanted to be able to do at a grade level is show distributions, averages by gender, by discipline, and then on the far right, that matrix which shows every average of every class in the upper school. And that's the one. So we've also got this for the middle school. So if you're a grade level chair, if you're an assistant director in the upper school, if you're the director of the upper school, you can, and Matt can sort this live, you can see and help answer a number of questions based on the performance across 5 to 7 to 10 different fields that we have in Blackbaud. And so we wanted to build this so that as an aggregate, this was a really good place to start to see a lot of the information we were asking questions on already, especially related to the academic performance. I'll pause there just based on time to see if there are questions.
Yeah, gender, and really, I mean, I think the slicers that we're looking at here, we're looking at gender, kind of grade level and course department. But if you wanted, eye color or, advisor or anything else, literally any data point that we're tracking, we're able to use to slice and dice the data, both as filters and then also to present it visually across, a million different factors. And then here, we've got the actual student name. So if I wanted to see the kids in this course, I can just immediately see, the distribution. When we see the actual names, we can see that in real time.
So is that one course, all sections, or is it one section of that course?
That's one course, all sections.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think we've got others. I don't think we've got them baked in here where we're looking section by section, teacher by teacher. If there's multiple teachers who are teaching that freshman English course, kind of what does that distribution look like? But I don't think we added those to this. But Carolyn, great question, because it's really, once we've got the raw data, we can tell any story we want with it.
Well, sometimes there's that one teacher.
There is. There
Right.
always is. Yeah.
In either direction that the administrators want to know, why are their grades so vastly different from the rest of the people teaching that class?
And I think to Brian's point early on, we can't tell you the why, but we can tell you that they are vastly different, and then you can kind of dig deeper.
Yeah, and I would say in developing this style of and the rollout to admin teams, we purposely drew a red line in the sand or a red line at teachers. And so the access that we are seeing together in this sample is exactly the same as admin sees, although Matt and I have it all. And so I've already been asked very similar questions and would expect very similar questions at a department level, a faculty level, a gender or student level. And really quickly, I'm able to add a tab, build out the visuals because all the data is there, and then share that individually with a senior administrator and who can have that type of discussion. So at Norfolk Academy, we stopped at the people. By that, I mean adults. So in the next couple of pages, you'll see it by course, and you can infer who taught the course, but we stopped with the filter at the teacher level unless it was needed for senior administration.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one, it's just so cool. And again, we tweaked the grades on the back end just so we're not telling all the secrets of Norfolk Academy's, grading history. But it just immediately pops off the page, the distribution across, departments. And then, as we dive into a department, individual courses within that department. I think we renamed all of them department name just so we wouldn't show that the Spanish teacher grades a lot more leniently than the French teacher at Norfolk Academy. whether that's true or not, I don't know. And then we've also got that ability to dive into, specific grade levels and specific years. So if we wanted to do a deep dive into, grades during that, end of the COVID year, we could immediately explore, the end of that year, alongside the following year and subsequent years. And I think a lot of those trend lines that we can see are just fascinating in a thousand different ways when we see what the data tells us.
Very cool.
And really, I know we're a little bit over time. Any last minute questions from anybody, or anything we haven't covered that you hope we might cover?
I'm curious, Brian, did you have to teach people how to read these? Did you have to teach your senior administrators like what they were looking at?
Yes. They of course have all the information and the intuition and the experience, but in the way it was presented, many times of sitting in a room and going through, not the way we're doing it. And I would say PowerBI is a great analytical tool. It's not a great presentation tool. So what I've learned over time is to make everything static and then build on the connection to a spreadsheet feel, which is a comfort level, and ease people into what they're seeing. And then pause like we have done to ask questions, because it's like drinking out of a fire hose. And then we get to a point where folks start saying, well, what about, and what if? And then at that point, I know we've connected with what Power BI is trying to help us do.
Because my gut, like, this is like so exciting. I want to take this whole thing and run to the senior administrators right now and be like, look at this. This is so amazing. But I'm sure they would feel like they were hit by a tsuami. Like they would like glaze over and be like, what am I even looking at? So
one thing I would throw out to the group, sorry to interrupt, I just know we're out of time. One thing I learned the hard way, so I will share it, is that if I could anticipate 2 questions that I know in my 20 years here we've asked but never known, and I had an aha moment with Matt and Power BI that could answer it, I would take it as a static visual on a piece of paper, and I would present the question and then walk folks through the static visual to get to the answer that we didn't have before. So it was a very small bites, knowing that I could provide an answer to or inform a discussion on something we just haven't been able to wrestle with in the same way, and allow them to see Power BI because they immediately go, how did you do this? Where is this? How do we get more? And that took me a while to figure out, quite honestly, but that's the way I try to do it now.
Yeah, and it was fascinating and just enlightening for me to watch the way that Brian kind of took this from us just building some ugly stuff on the back end to, very intentionally rolling it out only when it was ready to be rolled out, and not kind of sharing that first draft with anyone until it actually kind of told that comprehensive story. So I think I learned a lot just in the way that I handle kind of my interactions with my clients kind of through that process. All right, and I know we're over time. Guys,
massive
please.
thank you to you both for taking the time. This is awesome.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And thank you guys for joining. I'll share out the recording. And like I said up front, this is the type of work I do with my clients all day, every day. And I'm thrilled that I've been able to convince Brian to join me in some of these efforts. So if we can help in any way, please let us know. And even if you just want to get your data connected from Blackbaud to Power BI, I'll hop on a Zoom and be thrilled to do that before we even talk about any sort of consulting work, but just kind of get the data flowing so you can start getting your hands dirty.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, gang.
Great.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great afternoon.